The vibration of my cell phone on the granite kitchen counter shattered the quiet of the morning. The ringing came urgently at 7 a.m. On the screen was the name of the branch manager at the bank where I keep my money. My heart clenched. A sudden sense of dread shot through me, and I jumped up to answer. His voice on the other end was nothing like the calm, courteous tone he usually had during our portfolio review meetings. Instead, it was tight with unmistakable tension. He said my account had just been flagged as high risk because of a credit card debt totaling $100,000. I went completely still. I had never opened any credit card, let alone racked up a debt that enormous. For a few brief seconds, my mind went blank. All I could hear was my heart pounding hard against my ribs. He went on to explain that the system had detected multiple suspicious transactions. The account had been opened only 22 days ago and had already been maxed out within a single week through extravagant purchases, designer shopping sprees, first-class airline tickets, and large money transfers. Everything was under my name. My hands trembled as I denied it, struggling to steady myself so I could ask for every detail. And even worse, the people using that card were standing right in the bank lobby at that very moment, demanding to withdraw another $45,000. "Who's there?" I asked. David replied. "A man and two women. They claim to be your parents and your younger sister. They were threatening the bank staff, demanding the release of a deposit for a commercial lease." I told David to keep the freeze in place and not to let them know he had spoken to me. I hung up without yelling, without sending furious texts demanding an explanation. Noise is the weapon of the guilty. Paperwork is mine. The call ended with an urgent request. I needed to come to the bank immediately to verify my identity and work with the fraud investigation department. I arrived in a state of utter shock. Every minute on the way there felt like an hour. The moment I stepped inside, my mother didn't hesitate. She instantly slipped on the mask of a patient, long-suffering parent dealing with a difficult child. She sighed dramatically, loud enough for the tellers to hear. "Sloan, sweetheart, there's no need to make a scene. Chloe's furniture company is having a minor cash flow issue. She deserves some help. You're already successful." The shamelessness of it was suffocating. My father chimed in. "Don't turn this into a lawsuit. We're only borrowing under your profile temporarily. Once Chloe starts making a profit, she'll pay it back." Chloe rolled her eyes. "It's just a little use of your credit." "Why are you being so dramatic?" In the office, David showed me the application data. The name, social security number, and date of birth were all mine, but the contact phone number listed belonged to my mother. He added that the person who had come in to sign for the card had presented what appeared to be a valid power of attorney, along with copies of identification documents bearing my name. David explained that this escalated the situation from unauthorized family use to synthetic identity theft and federal wire fraud. I asked him to print the full transaction history. The numbers flashed in glaring red: $14,000 at a furniture showroom, $9,000 on electronics, $6,000 at a luxury spa. And the final line: $45,000 pending transfer to an account under the name Chloe Vanguard Interiors LLC, a company of my sister's that did not even exist. When I walked back out into the lobby with the file in my hands, my family still looked convinced they had won. Beatrice demanded that I sign the release order because Chloe has a meeting with the leasing agent in an hour. Richard barked. "Sign it, Sloan. You're embarrassing the family." Chloe shrugged indifferently. "It's not like we stole your kidney." I looked Chloe straight in the eye. "There is no loan. The account has been permanently frozen. The $45,000 transfer has been canceled, and the $55,000 already spent has been flagged as federal fraud." Beatrice hissed that I was destroying my sister's future, but I answered with the truth about the forged ID and the office address listed under my father's name. Richard's face turned red. He tried to intimidate me physically. "Go in there and fix this right now. You don't get to tear this family apart over some paperwork." I calmly held up the application metadata report. "This isn't paperwork, it's a felony. It shows the fake ID was uploaded from an IP address registered to your architecture firm's office." Richard went pale. Every word they spoke felt like a blade cutting deeper into me. I was furious, hurt, and deeply disappointed, not because of the money, but because of the betrayal. The people I trusted most were the very ones who had pushed me into serious legal danger. I contacted my personal attorney and braced myself for the worst: a legal battle, cutting ties, and facing criticism from relatives. But I had no other choice. For the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. Protecting yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. My mother burst into tears, apologizing over and over. She said they had only wanted to give my sister a chance to start her business. My sister's eyes filled with tears as she insisted she had no idea things would become this serious, but every explanation sounded hollow to me. They had put me at risk of crushing debt, lawsuits, even potential criminal charges. My father, however, kept his voice firm. He accused me of being selfish for dragging a family matter into the legal system. He said honor and reputation were what mattered most. At that, I let out a bitter laugh. So, in his eyes, the family's image was worth more than his daughter's safety and future. When the attorney announced that the case file would be forwarded directly to the Financial Crimes Division, the room fell into absolute silence. My mother broke down in uncontrollable sobs. My sister's face drained of color. My father stood frozen, his eyes filled with confusion and disbelief. For the first time, they understood that this was no longer a family dispute, it had become a serious criminal case. Less than an hour later, 2 financial investigators arrived. They collected everything: the application records, bank statements, security camera footage, original signatures, and on-site testimonies. My parents were instructed to cooperate with the investigation immediately. I stood there, watching it all unfold, my chest heavy. Even though I had braced myself for consequences, I hadn't expected everything to move so quickly or feel so intense. My father tried to explain that he had only wanted to help his youngest daughter, that he never meant to harm me. But in the face of clear evidence, every justification sounded empty. Identity forgery, falsified documents, and the unauthorized use of personal information were more than enough to constitute serious criminal offenses. When they were asked to sign the official statements, my father's hand trembled. My mother could barely remain standing, and I stood silently behind them, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions, pain, and disappointment. Yes, but also a strange sense of relief. At last, the truth was out in the open. I understood that from this moment on, my family would never be the same. But I had no regrets. If I didn't stand up to protect myself, no one else would do it for me. The days that followed passed in a heavy, oppressive silence. I received almost no calls or messages from my family. It wasn't until my attorney updated me on the investigation that I learned my parents had officially been charged with identity forgery and financial fraud. My sister's business operations were suspended, her partners quickly withdrew, and her fledgling company nearly collapsed within days. I didn't feel any sense of triumph. Instead, there was only emptiness and exhaustion. Family had once been the place I returned to after every hardship. Now it had become the source of my deepest pain. I spent many sleepless nights wondering whether things could have turned out differently if they had only asked me once instead of going behind my back. One afternoon, I received a short message from my mother. "I'm sorry." Just 2 words, yet they made my chest tighten. I didn't reply. Not because I couldn't forgive, but because I wasn't ready. Some wounds run too deep to be healed by a single apology. A few months later, as the legal process gradually stabilized, my life began to find its familiar rhythm again. The $100,000 debt was officially removed from my credit report, my accounts were fully restored, and the financial reputation I had spent years building was finally protected. It wasn't just relief, it was a quiet victory after weeks of relentless tension. I moved into a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, where each morning was filled with sunlight. No more urgent phone calls, no more exhausting confrontations. I slowly relearned how to enjoy simple peace. I returned to old habits: reading, jogging, cooking, and spending time with myself, the very things I had once postponed because I was too busy worrying about others. At work, I was promoted to a new position. Perhaps it was the way I had handled the crisis calmly and decisively that changed how my superiors saw me. For the first time, I felt truly recognized for my abilities, not because of any connections or family ties. I also learned how to forgive, not to return to what was, but to release the weight in my heart. I no longer carried resentment toward my family, but I also no longer allowed them to cross the boundaries I had set. My peace is now the most valuable thing I own. Most importantly, I learned how to value myself. I no longer feel guilty for prioritizing my own peace and safety. I'm no longer afraid of being judged as selfish, because I understand now that only when I am strong and steady can I truly live a whole and meaningful life. One quiet morning, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the city wake beneath the soft sunlight. There were no urgent calls, no fear of invisible debts hanging over me. Everything around me seemed slower, lighter, and clearer than ever before. I know the road ahead will not always be smooth, but now, I have the strength to face whatever comes. I am no longer afraid to say no, no longer hesitant to set boundaries, and no longer willing to accept injustice simply because of two words: family. I choose to slow down, to focus on my health, my work, and relationships that are healthy and mutual. I've learned to appreciate the smallest moments: a peaceful morning, a home-cooked meal, an afternoon walk in the sun. These simple things have become the most precious gifts. In the end, I know I no longer need to prove anything to anyone. My worth does not depend on others' approval, but on how I honor and respect myself. And from that moment on, I move forward without looking back, without regret, carrying only one steady belief: I deserve a life of peace and freedom. After everything I've been through, I understand that my story is not unique. Out there, many people are quietly carrying wounds inflicted by the very ones they love most. They stay silent because they fear breaking the family apart, fear criticism, fear being labeled selfish. But that silence often allows the pain to last longer and grow deeper. I used to be one of them. I believed that if I endured long enough, things would eventually change on their own, but they didn't. Only when I found the courage to confront the truth and speak up was I able to break free from that cycle. And I realized something powerful. Protecting yourself is not betraying your family, it is honoring your own life. If you are in a similar situation, please remember this: you are not alone. You have the right to be safe, to be respected, and to live a life free from manipulation. Reach out to people who can support you: trusted friends, a lawyer, your bank, or professional support organizations. Don't let fear convince you to accept wrongdoing as something normal or inevitable. Life doesn't always offer easy choices, but every brave decision can open a new door. For me, it was the door to freedom, peace, and growth. And if there is one message I want to leave behind, it is this: believe in your own worth. You deserve a life better than the one you are merely enduring. There are still nights when I lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that happened, not to relive the pain, but to remind myself how strong I had to become. From someone who was once afraid to face the truth, I learned how to stand tall, confront it, and move beyond it. I no longer blame my family. I understand that everyone carries their own limits, fears, and flaws. But I also no longer allow those wounds to shape my future. I've learned to accept the past, release resentment, and hold on only to the lessons that made me wiser. Life after the storm did not become perfect, but it became real. I know who I am, what I need, and what is worth protecting. I no longer live to please others. I live to be whole within myself. Peaceful mornings, simple meals, honest conversations, all of it has become more precious than ever. I've realized that happiness isn't about how much you have, but about how light your heart feels. Perhaps the scar in my heart will never completely fade, but I'm no longer afraid of it, because those scars remind me of something important. I may have fallen, but I also rose again. And now, I continue walking my path with a steady belief that anyone can rewrite their life, as long as they are brave enough to begin again from the very place where they were once hurt the most. I don't know where the future will lead me, but for the first time, I'm not afraid of that uncertainty. After everything that happened, I've learned to trust myself, to trust my choices, and to believe that no matter how uneven the road ahead may be, I am strong enough to keep going. I began setting new goals for myself, no longer bound by other people's expectations. I started learning the things I genuinely enjoyed, doing work that made me happy, and building a life on my own terms. Each day, I made a conscious effort to slow down, listen to my own emotions, and appreciate the smallest moments. At times, old memories still return, reminding me of the wounds I once carried. But instead of avoiding them, I've learned to face them calmly. I know now that my past does not define me. It is only part of the journey, not the destination. I believe that every one of us deserves a new beginning, no matter how difficult our starting point may be. As long as we are brave enough to let go of what no longer serves us, we can find our own path. And when I look back, I smile. Not because everything turned out perfectly, but because I didn't give up. I chose to stand up, to change, and to live a life worthy of myself. For a long time, I lived in fear, afraid of disappointing others, afraid of being judged, afraid of losing my family's approval. I grew used to putting my own feelings last, used to suffering in silence, convincing myself that this was what maturity looked like. But after everything I went through, I finally understand that blind sacrifice does not create real love. I began learning how to listen to myself. I allowed myself to be tired, to feel sad, and to say no when necessary. Those seemingly simple things became major turning points, slowly helping me regain balance in my life. I realized that no one has the right to define my worth, not even those related to me by blood. My value is built on how I live, how I overcome hardship, and how kindly I treat myself. When I stopped searching for validation from the outside, I finally felt a deep sense of relief. The road ahead is still long, but I no longer walk it in fear. I move forward with clarity, steadiness, and a quiet faith in myself. I know I am not perfect, but I am genuine, and that is enough. After everything, I chose myself again, not out of selfishness, but because I deserve a life that is peaceful, free, and whole. If you are reading these words with a heavy heart, I want you to know this. You are not alone. You may feel confused, disappointed, even lost right now, but those emotions do not make you weak. On the contrary, they show that you are trying very hard to survive and keep going. Life is not always fair. Sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people we trust the most. But that does not mean you are less valuable or unworthy of love. You deserve respect. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to live as your true self. Give yourself time to heal. You don't have to be strong overnight. Moving forward a little each day, even very slowly, is already a victory. Trust that one day you will look back and realize how far you've come. Don't be afraid to set boundaries. Don't be afraid to protect your heart. And above all, don't forget to treat yourself with kindness. After everything, the one person who will stay with you the longest is yourself. When everything finally settled, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself, no longer the trembling girl paralyzed by fear, but a woman who had learned how to stand firm after being hurt. I understood that justice is not only about reclaiming what was taken, but also about reclaiming the right to live according to your own values. The old wounds may still exist, but they no longer control me. They have become reminders that I once suffered, once fell, but never gave up. Each step forward no longer feels heavy, it carries hope. I began a new life, freer, calmer, and more authentic. I stopped trying to please everyone and focused instead on being kind to myself. Because when we learn to love ourselves, the world around us slowly begins to change as well. And perhaps that is the most beautiful ending to a journey filled with tears.